A Harry Problem by Blue Bastard. Chapter 22 Red Paw. Twilight appeared in a puff of magic smoke outside the one-lit barn on the farm. Inside the barn, the rest of the impromptu Werewolf Rescue Squad were operating as if they were a pit stop team going for the world record of making car modifications. On one side of the barn, Lyra and Sandalwood were busy tuning the car to what they thought would be the best settings for off-roading, as the trail to Winsome Falls wasn't as nice as those in Ponyville proper. On the other side, it was like a complete overhaul project was being done in 5 minutes, while Iron Will acted as a jack, holding up one end of the car. Big Mac and Rainbow Dash were removing the broken axle and putting in an improvised new one. Rarity was off to the side, trying to make what appeared to be a cramped passenger area be a bit more comfortable. Pinky, Fluttershy, Spike, Granny, and Apple Bloom were against one wall, ready to help with either project when needed, but otherwise staying out of the way.
"Did you find the book you were looking for?"
asked Granny.
"Yeah,"
replied the unicorn. "I can't believe I forgot I had this book." In her telekinesis was the copy of Magical and Maniacal Monsters of Melissa's Mayhem, which she received around the time Applejack had started exhibiting signs of her coming lycanthropy. But it had put aside, and only now would its contents possibly provide insight to the situation at hand.
"That's great, darling,"
said Rarity, now standing atop the somewhat fixed car with its new axle.
"But do you think you can lend me a hoof and use some of your transformation magic to spruce this thing up a bit?"
"How, Rarity? I'm not a mechanic."
"Oh, I don't know. Do that spell you used on that apple for the carrots we used to go to the Grand Galaxy Gala, I guess."
"Where they're sat, I suppose."
"Wait, the Grand was a what?"
asked Iron Will, confused, as the upper class were more or less already pretentious assholes who threw money around when they needed to be assertive. They didn't pay much attention to the Minotaur, who went around teaching the lower classes to be that way. Thus, Iron Will's status among the elite ponies was non-existent, and he knew nothing of their gayest gatherings.
"Don't worry about it,"
replied Twilight, levitating an apple from a nearby collection barrel and placing it on top of the ramshackle car. Every pony backed away as Twilight charged her magic and released it at the apple. The result was unexpected. Generally, what every pony had expected was just a carriage top made in the shape of an apple, but mounted on top of an old cart chassis. Instead, an entirely new vehicle stood where the old one had. It was similar to the other car in styling, namely the headlights and presumable location of the engine. But that's where the similarities stopped. Whereas the car Lyra and Sandalwood had built its cabin open to the air, this new vehicle had a frame around its cabin in the shape of an apple, with a space inside for 3 ponies. In the back was an open-air bed with room for maybe 3 more ponies, or 1 pony and 1 Minotaur.
"Wow!"
exclaimed Apple Bloom excitedly.
"Like it's much better than what I built with Skids and Sweetie."
"What is it?"
asked Big Mac. The last time he'd seen anything like the machine before him, the other car in the barn notwithstanding, was the Super Speedy Sire Squeezy 6000. But whereas that machine had looked somewhat threatening, this new contraption did not.
"It's a truck!"
shouted Lyra, almost in awe of it. Every pony else agreed not to ask Lyra why she decided to dub it a truck, as it probably involved humans.
"Well, I guess you get to drive the car, Lyra, because I'm going to have to take that truck out for a spin,"
grinned Sandalwood. "Okay, we don't have much time," interrupted Twilight, leaping into the back of the truck. "Lyra, you'll drive the car. Take Pinky, Apple Bloom, Granny Smith, and Fluttershy. Sandalwood, you'll take the truck with Rarity, Big Mac, and Iron Will. You'll ride in the back with me, since you can't fit in the cabin. Rainbow Dash, you'll fly it from above, since you're the fastest flyer."
"What about me?"
asked Spike, every pony else going to their assigned vehicles. His answer was sending him lifting off the ground and being deposited in the truck next to Twilight.
"Okay, we're ready to go?"
shouted Lyra, putting on her driving goggles and revving the engine. Sandalwood did the same. Every pony else was in the consensus it was now or ever.
"All right then, let's go save Applejack!"
The 2 vehicles roared to life, shooting out of the barn with Rainbow Dash taking point, leading the on-convoy onto the path that led to Winsome Falls. Twilight bucked down in the back and cracked open her book. Now was the time to do research that, if the fates were willing, would yield Applejack's salvation. Sable laughed. Oh, please. I've been around for centuries. This isn't, to put it in your terms, my first rodeo, so to speak. No, I didn't think so. You probably tortured my innocent ponies because of reasons that make only sense inside your head, including both my parents and myself, accused Applejack. Your parents? Oh, those two. In all honesty, I had nothing to do with them becoming werewolves. Not directly, anyway. But it is because of those two that I've acted the way I have for the past decade. What? Turning me into the same kind of monster as you just to get revenge on a pair of well-meaning ponies who you never did any harm? I hadn't actually thought about it that way. Though, I suppose it would be considered revenge against them. After all, they were never proper werewolves to begin with, despite being converted. But no. Really, I only decided to pass my gifts on to you at the last second. Frankly, you should be more thankful that some ponies such as I saw fit to save you from the drudgery of civilization. But if I wasn't meant to be the one you made into a monster, then why did you do it to me? And who were you originally going to put this curse upon? Sable sighed. If you're going to be so insistent, you might as well know I originally planned to convert that stupid unicorn friend of yours, that Boris Twilight Sparkle. Applejack gasped. But why her? What does she do to you to make you want to harm her just as you did to me? Nothing really. At least, nothing she's directly done. However, she unfortunately happens to be the favorite student of that intolerable Princess Celestia you ponies worship as a goddess. She never had the right to take the throne, or to split it with her worthless sister. So she deserves having her favorite pupil taken from her. That already happened! But that's what she took from me 10 years ago. Taking her pupil is the only start of what I intend to do in revenge against that bitch! 10 years ago, thought Applejack. That's when Celestia said she killed this pony with her magic, even to the pulling vapor ass of him. Well, how he could be standing here unless she didn't kill him. Oblivious to the confusion on Applejack's face, Sable continued. I'm sure I'll inform you about the actual reasoning later, but right now you just need to know that with your status as a feral werewolf, you make the start of the next great age of Equestria. He evilly smiled at that. And how exactly am I going to do that? Suspiciously asked Applejack, getting ready to make her choice of fight or flight, namely out of fear of what he was going to say. Why, because the reason I turned you into a werewolf instead of Sparkle. You are by far the best candidate out of the 6 elements with your strength and endurance, which surely will be tested sooner or later, and will make a far better mate for me and the next generation of werewolves. The horror sped across Applejack's face like wildfire. She expected him to say something like, the first many of my new army, or something. She wasn't expecting him to have done this to her, simply so she'd be the one giving birth to the new army. No! No! She screamed, turning tail and dashing back the way she came as fast as she could. She wasn't going to let that old monster take her for his own, away from her family, her friends, everything that mattered to her. Simply being a werewolf was bad enough, but to be the enslaved concubine of that thing was beyond acceptable. A smirk came to Sable's face as he watched his future mate run off. He gave her a few seconds before taking off to give chase himself. It was always more entertaining when his prey ran. He never had to hunt another werewolf. So he expected this to be especially fun, as it was something unique even to a 1,000-year-old individual such as himself.
Ah! Slow down! These toads are slamming me all over the place and ruining my mane!
Whined Rarity. In normal circumstances, the element of generosity would have, and had, gone to extreme lengths to protect her friends, and this was no exception, as Applejack's life was potentially on the line. That being said, she would have preferred a much more comfortable ride to the whole life-saving part of the journey at hand. Currently, she was the unfortunate one who got the middle seat in the truck cabin, crammed between Big Mac and Sandalwood. Stuck between the big, red, immovable object of a stallion and the naturally tough Earth Pony mare, Rarity was wedged into a spot she really shouldn't have been able to fit in. Worse, the trail was full of twists and turns she didn't remember hiking. if getting pushed by a cart by Sleepy Bell counted as that Sandalwood kept taking at high speed to keep up with Lyra's car, the momentum pushing Rarity into either one of the two Earth ponies next to her.
Rarity, I love you as a friend, but for Celestia's sake, can you stop whining?
Said Sandalwood, pushing back against Rarity as to have enough room to merely steer the wheel. Big Mac found the situation made worse by Rarity's whining as well, but, as usual, he just stuck with it wordlessly. In the back, Twilight and Spike were being held comfortably by one of Iron Will's bathing arms, while he used the other to keep a steady grip on the truck cabin. Were furiously pacing through the magical and maniacal monsters of Melissa's mayhem to try and find anything of worth inside it. Fortunately for Twilight, the book was everything she hoped for. A database loaded to bear with information on all kinds of creatures. Changelings, Hydras, Jettas, Zakus, every creature imaginable except werewolves. It was extremely hard for Twilight to resist stopping to read just a paragraph or two.
Come on, Twi, we gotta keep going. I'm trying, Spike, but there's just so information here that I just can't. Look it out!
Cried Pinkie Pie. Suddenly, reacting fast, both Lyra and Sandalwood immediately slammed the brakes on the vehicles. It slid to a stop. However, they did it in the opposite directions, such that the headlights now eliminated a 50-foot stretch of path. No sooner had they stopped than two figures shot out of the dark forest and into the light. Time seemingly come to a dead stop the moment both were in the glow of the electric light. The first one was Applejack, in her altered beast form, her face etched with horror and fear. The second, chasing figure was more distorted, looking far more like a hairy wolf, but still enough like a pony for it to be identified as a werewolf. Its face screamed of almost feral pleasure and lust, as if it was enjoying the chase to levels no sane individual could. But the most telling element of the second figure was the remnants of what could only have been a cutie mark. Highlighted by the headlights, the red spot lines of the figure's flanks were seen by the occupants of the two vehicles on either side, forming the fake shape of a red paw print. There was no question that the second figure was not only a werewolf, but none other than the famous Sable-Lord himself, his presence striking fear into the souls of all those who assembled. Then, just as time seemed to stop, it resumed, until Applejack and Sable sped off into the night, possibly not even noticing the two vehicles flanking from them.
Who was that?
Asked Iron Will, confused at the presence of a second werewolf no pony seemed to have ever mentioned in his presence before.
That was Sable-Lord,
whimpered Fluttershy, recovering seeing what could happen to Applejack, as he gave in to her bestial urges of a mindless violence of a werewolf. Wait a sec, started Rainbow Dash. Was it just me, or did Sable look suspiciously exactly like
the creature that bit
Applejack?
Fizzed every pony else. The answer to that eternal question finally answered.
Will somebody please tell Iron Will who this Sable-Lord is?
Demanded Iron Will, getting a little bit impatient. Rainbow swooped in front of the Minotaur. Okay, short version. He's a traitor to the equestrian count, had King Sabra turned him and spun his buddies into werewolves, except he's also immortal. He's also probably the one who turned Applejack into a werewolf, and that we're going to have to stop him before he does whatever he's going to do to our friend. Got it?
I think,
answered Iron Will. Good! Now let's go! There's no telling where they're headed now! Applejack ran. She ran harder than she ever had before. Her instincts were going haywire, as they were wired for her werewolf predator, not the werewolf prey. She couldn't even think clear thoughts, the most coherent being, don't go into town. Indeed, with all the noise coming from behind her, she couldn't let the town know about her lycanthropy. She'd be shunned for the rest of her life, and Sable would win then. So instead, she changed course and went to Everfree, back of the route she used to run when being a werewolf. It was still a good thing for her. She was certain that at some point she had gone through the light of headlights, both from that car thing Lyra and Sandalwood had built, but also possibly the resurrected form of Apple Bloom's car, the accursed machine that had started this whole ordeal. Whether or not the rest of her family and friends had been in those vehicles, she didn't notice, but she hoped they would come to her rescue as soon as she could hear Sable behind her. Into the Everfree she went, down the old running paths, but also improvising and going in between them at random. The only things he had really looked for was poison joke patches. Getting contaminated by that practical jokester of a plant would not be pleasant in this situation. Eventually, after running non-stop for almost 45 minutes, she couldn't hear her pursuer anymore. She knew better, however. While she slowed down to catch her breath, she kept an ear open to try and detect him coming towards her. As he slowed to a slight walk, she noted that he was in the part of the forest she had never been in before. It was noticeably younger than the rest of the forest, the trees in this area having been mostly less than 10 years old. Having transplanted trees all her life, Applejack knew the young, natural trees, and the giant ones that had to have been transplanted from somewhere in the Everfree. But why would there be an odd mix of trees in this area? Wondered Applejack, before she realized he was dead center in a valley, circular to a point it was like an upside-down kill, or there had been a massive explosion here. Then she saw it. Next to his tree, the tallest tree around, probably placed as to disguise the odd terraforming from a Pegasus flying above Everfree for some reason, was a single tombstone. She approached it, knowing that it looked like it was in poor condition, as if it was just left here to be worn away. Upon closer inspection, the tombstone seemed to be made of limestone, probably brought cheaply as it looked like one would impact would destroy it. Free from the rock farm as provided by one Mod Pie. But an even closer inspection revealed a name that had once been inscribed on the face, but years of weather had worn it away into an indescribable series of scratches. Her name was Fair Vista, said Sable, coming up from behind Applejack. The orange werewolf immediately turned around, but both werewolves knew she wasn't going to run. She was still breathing heavily from the exertion of having to run, an amazing thing considering her normal athletic ability and the boost of being a werewolf. Sable, on the other hand, looked like he hadn't broken a sweat.
Who? The last pony you turned into a werewolf?
Did she die of natural causes, or because she eventually defaulted into a full wolf, something I'm probably going to end up becoming? No. When I turned her, and unlike you, she was thankful for what I gave her. She too became immortal, and the years we spent together were the happiest of my life. Let me guess. She was your mate? What does that make me? Your sad attempt at replacing her? You should be honored that I even consider you worthy of being a good candidate for filling her role, and you'll do just fine as part of my revenge plan, since you are the element of honesty, are you not? Okay. Just what in the hell did Celestia do that had you so pissed off? Isn't it obvious? Celestia murdered the only pony I ever cared about, right here on this spot, and by hell or high water, I will avenge Fair Vista! Chapter 23. House done on the farm.
You liar!
Snarled Applejack.
Princess Celestia wouldn't murder any pony, even if they were pretty evil like you. She didn't murder King Sombra when she and Princess Luna sealed away in the frozen north. And she didn't murder Nightmare Moon when she banished her to the moon for 1,000 years. She may not seek the fate to kill, but her punishments can be far more worse than death.
As expected, you are just as blind to your princess's true actions as the rest of her loyal subjects. There is no question that Celestia is the reason why my beloved was incinerated in a massive explosion that created the pit in which we now stand. She intended to kill me that night, as her version of the story states. But let me tell you the real story of what happened years ago. Really, Starlet, I don't understand why you think those two are the ideal candidates for establishing a new pack. They're simply farmers. They don't yearn for the hunt like I do, or see the world like you do. Oh, hun, trust me. Because they're farmers means they'll know exactly how to set up a way to feed the rest of the group. And no pony is going to miss them, because they're a part of that bloody apple family. I swear, there's so much common that make up half of the equestrian's population, Starlet muttered. Stable Romeo, really disguised alter egos of Fair Vista and Stable Loam, were sitting at some pastry shop in the middle of some town they happened to come across while wandering the world. Using their disguise charms, Vista, with an enchanted locket, and Sable, with a piece of his old guard armor hid in his satchel, they were freely to integrate into this Ponyville society. At least, as much as possible, when one of the local hotspots was a pastry shop decorated to look like a gingerbread house, the one the disguised werewolves were currently sitting at, and eating an ice cream cake filled with strawberry ice cream. While Fair Vista had acclimated extremely well to the werewolf way of life, she never let go of her love for strawberry ice cream and cake. While Sable would surely dislike having to go anywhere near modern pony society, he was willing to tolerate short-term visits, if it meant making Fair Vista happy. But he was having serious doubts about her idea about converting the local farmers into the cornerstone of a new werewolf pack. Sure, they were strong, but Sable was concerned about their rather calm temperament. Ponies who didn't have much anger capacity were never going to make good werewolf warriors. To Sable, being an angry field part of the hunt, then there was the other problem. Starry, do not forget the problem of conversion. There are very rare ponies who can become long-lived werewolves and retain who they are. The weak majority will succumb to lycanthropy and become useless primal wolves. Starlet, Fair Vista, laughed.
Oh, please. You said that process takes months. Plus, you found me, and I'm clearly not devolved into a lesser being, right?
Sable had to admit, it was pure luck that the one mare he loved also happened to be one of the rare variety who retrained her pony mindset in farm. He loved to have an army of werewolves who were immortal like them to take over Equestria. But were farmers really the answer to that wish?
Honey, let me handle this. Worst case, you're right.
The farmers are just as good as cattle and will be worthless to us in a few months, and we have to start from scratch.
At the very least, we'll learn from our mistakes and can try again. We're immortal. We've got nothing but time.
Have I ever told you how glad I am that the mare who joined me for all these decades is also the smartest mare I ever known? Said Sable, leaning in to kiss his love. A few days later, after nights of stalking the place for the right moment, Fair Vista moved in. She caught her targets. A local farming couple by the names of Appleseed and Cornflower had made quite a bloody mess of them, but left them alive for the emergency response ponies to deal with. Most importantly, she sunk her fangs into their necks pretty deep, so there was no question they had contracted lycanthropy. A mile away, Sable and Fair Vista were in the middle of celebrating the start of their long-term plans, when Sable caught the sight of a large flash of light. To his horror, he recognized that light, despite only having seen it last a thousand years ago, when Celestia had called him out for being a would-be usurper.
Sable?
Asked Fair Vista, realizing something was wrong.
What's that light?
Run! He shouted, turning and nudging Fair Vista to get up. She did so quickly, her pupils shrinking at her lover being in fear. There was only one pony on the planet who he feared, and if she was close by, the shouts of innumerable royal guards sounded out less than a mile away, charging into the forest without abandon. The werewolf turned tail and fled as fast as they could. The ground troops were nothing to worry about, after all. They could not match the speed of experienced werewolves. Pegasus guards, however, were the real concern. They could keep up with a werewolf of age, and unless they were low-flying, there was no way to attack them. Deciding to split up, the two werewolves promised to meet up later and head off in different directions. For a few hours this tactic went on, a cat-and-mouse game where the predators were now the prey, all around the forest next to Ponyville. Finally, to Sable's relief, he could hear the order to retreat being given, and all the pursuing guard noises away. Man, the guard is nothing like it used to be when I was still in it. Even then it was bad, but at least Vista and I got away. Now to... He was silenced in his voiced thoughts by a sight he had never hoped to see. There, hovering above the ground, with her mighty wings beating in concert, was Princess Celestia herself. With an expression of extreme disgust, her horn was channeling unfathomable amounts of magic, and a gigantic ball of pure light was glowing from its tip. Then Sable realized the princess wasn't aiming at him. She probably didn't even know he was here. Vista! He cried out as he moved toward where the princess seemed to be aiming. But The princess, oblivious to her true target's location, had found a werewolf near the scene of the crime, and she was going to eradicate its cursed existence out of her kingdom. She swung her head back, and then forward sharply, sending the now massive ball of light crashing into Everfree, a rod type who she thought was Sable alone. As the real Sable Hollow reached towards Fair Fista, he could only watch as the ball simply kept sinking into the ground as he raced toward it, a sudden surge of power passing past him as it detonated, destroying a large area of the forest, and knocking Sable back into a tree, knocking him out. The moral of the story is, kids, do not piss off the girl who can summon a solar flare and nuke your body. Thank you. It was a bright sunny day when he woke up. He was in his much-hated original form as a pony, instead of his preferred wolf form. Shifting back to normal, he rushed to the center of the blast, and hoped beyond hope Fair Fista was alive. Sadly, all he found was a massive crater in the earth. Everything that had been in it simply disintegrated. No burned tree trunks, no charred carcasses of dead animals, and no Fair Fista at all. In fact, all Sable found of his lover were her locket, which she must have somehow dropped right outside the radius of the crater, and thus escaped destruction. But the mirror herself had been wiped clean away, blasted right into the sequel, by the very same princess who had set him down on the path of becoming of what he was now. Sometime later, once Celestia's terraforming project had disguised the crater as a natural part of the Everfree, Sable worked up the nerve to return to the site and place a gravestone he had bought in town. On its surface, he used his own claws to carve Fair Fista's name into the otherwise blank surface. Once done, he swore vengeance for her, and everything Celestia had done wrong by him. Years later, he learned that a pony named Twilight Sparkle, student of Celestia, and the one who had restored the elements of harmony, was living in that same accursed town. He made it his mission to see a new pact created in Fair Fista's name, with no acceptable outcome other than the death of Celestia and his ascension to ruler of all ponykind, which wouldn't remain ponies for long. Wait, let me get this straight. Your whole plan was essentially to get revenge on the princess by converting Twilight into a werewolf under your command, then use her to build up an army of werewolves to overthrow the princess? Basically, yes. You think no pony else has ever tried that before? It would be common knowledge if such an attempt was made, wouldn't it? Applejack just stared at her tormentor. Then, starting with a giggle, she suddenly busted out laughing. What's so funny? For some pony who likes to hide in public, you sure are up to speed with current events. Tell me, does the name Crane Chrysalis mean anything to you? No. Why? Well, it should, since he pretty much did exactly what you wanted to do with her army of changelings. And she almost succeeded, too. You don't have anything compared to Chrysalis's resources. Yet, you think all you need to do is turn a bunch of ponies into werewolves and lead them in all-out attack on Canterlot. I'm nothing more than a simple farmer. No fancy learning and all that. And even I can tell you your plan has more holes in it than one of Rarity's tea bags. You're just the butt of one long joke, ain't you? I bet Sabalome isn't your real name. It's actually Buzz Stallion. Unfortunately, Applejack, her comment ended up striking a nerve deep in Sable's subconscious that hadn't been triggered in a long time. I will not be insulted in such a manner, growled Sable, baring his razor teeth. I was regulated to being a stupid scout back then when I was in the guard, all because my commanders thought their silly little tactics and diversions were more honorable than being a true killer and facing the enemy head on. Now I am centuries older. I survived trials you cannot imagine, and I will not have the one who will mother my new army think I am dumber than an uneducated country hack. Applejack bared her fangs and returned. Yeah, for real. After all this build-up, I've been force-fed about how you're supposed to be some kind of immortal nightmare. Now you're taking offense at me, saying I'm smarter than you? I've suffered at your hooves, paws for whatever this long, and you want to play that stupid game with me? I will make you learn your place, bitch! Snarled Sable, as he leapt to subdue the unruly werewolf in front of him. I'm gonna be a bitch, but no way am I gonna be your bitch! Retorted Applejack, who in turn evaded and proceeded to launch her own barrage of attacks at Sable. It was a dog-eat-dog situation, where 2 werewolves had entered, but only one would leave. Meanwhile, not too far from the crater, "Finally!" exclaimed Twilight. "I finally found it!"
Found what?
"The section of werewolves!"
All right.
As Twilight read on, however, the smile on her face drooped into a frown as he started to figure out just what was going on with Applejack.
Found anything useful yet?
Called out Sablewood from the driver's seat. "It's not good," answered Twilight. "Due to the nature of what lycanthropy is, according to this book, Applejack's only hope of ever being restored to her normal self is if she kills Sable Loam."
She has to what?
exclaimed the horrified Rarity.
Applejack's not a killer. I mean, sure, she eats meat by the bucketful lately, but she'd never really take another pony's life, would she?
That's what I'm worried about. Normally she wouldn't, but if she had given in to that point where she will kill, could Applejack ever really truly turn back to normal? Sable had to admit, he hadn't been expecting the fight to be this challenging. It worried him, even, that although Applejack was still very inexperienced as a werewolf, she was already bobbing and weaving around his attacks, like she had done this for years. It made him wonder just what a rodeo actually was, if this mare had won awards and such things. He was rewarded for his diverted attention, with a claw swipe to his face, as Applejack lashed out.
"How you like them apples?"
she shouted. Her response was receiving a sudden blow to the chest, followed by a long swipe at her side. Sable's claws didn't go deep, but they did leave some sizable cuts that really hurt, even considering how they were already healing slowly. To be honest, I never really liked apples, Sable taunted as he launched into another attack. Applejack tried to block. All she got for her trouble was more wounds on her forelegs, as swipe after swipe laid into her. Suddenly, Applejack spun in place, causing Sable to fly past her. She took the chance and moved in, clamping her jaws onto Sable's hind legs. He screamed as the pain registered in his brain. He got to let her go after landing some more hits, but while it was some of the more serious wounds of the fight he had so far, Applejack was shocked to see him just seemingly start walking it off. "Oh, you are going to make a great mate once you finally belong to me," said Sable with a sinister tone.
"Not gonna happen!"
replied Applejack. "But it's true. After all, your parents belonged to me after Fair Fista turned them into werewolves. How do you think they died?" Mixed emotions played out over Applejack's face. "No, you can't know how my parents died."
"Nobody does!"
"Oh, get a grip on reality. That how I used you earlier to draw you to me? I used it that night to summon your parents to see if they were worth keeping around. Somehow, it sort of worked. But your mother was worthless, and your father was already far too gone towards being a werewolf. So, I killed them.
You mean you're the one who killed my mom and dad?"
I'm surprised I ended up having to explain that, but no worries. You're far better stocked than your parents, and I won't be making the same mistakes.
"Your mistake was thinking I'd go along with you being a murderous werewolf!"
cried Applejack, as he launched into another flurry of attacks, Sable doing the same. Celestia had sat down to enjoy a late evening cup of tea and to read some more into the new science fiction book Twilight had recommended before she went to bed. While the title, Razorblade Angel, was rather unusual, the content was excellent, and Celestia was worried the book would end too quickly. That's when the letter appeared in a cloud of magic. Surprised to be getting a letter this late, Celestia opened it up and expected a friendship report. What she got caused both her coat, mane, and tail to instantly pale. 30 seconds later, Luna found herself being escorted by the guards to the royal armory, where she found Celestia putting on her battle armor for the first time in what had to have been centuries.
"Sister, what is the meaning of this?"
inquired the Azure Alicorn.
"He's back, Luna. Applejack is in serious danger,"
replied the surprisingly frazzled Sun Princess, as he magically attached a four-leg armored piece. She didn't need to go into specifics for Luna to understand who he was.
"But, Ceti, what do you hope to attempt by going out into full battle body? You're acting like you're leading the assault against the Taisies for crying out loud! That's because I must end this battle tonight! Luna, I made a mistake over 1,000 years ago when I didn't just have Sable executed on the spot for treason, and it's cost thousands of ponies their lives, if not more. Unless I stop that monster now, he might make victims out of more than just one unfortunate mare. Sable alone will die tonight, with his heart impaled by my horn, if he need be. But what if he bites you? What if he tries to turn you into a werewolf? Equestria needs us to remain pure. Just imagine the chaos that would erupt if you ended up as some kind of abomination! That's why the battle armor, sister. No bite can break these plates. Not even the bite of a dragon. And don't ask me how I know that. Luna was silent for a moment, watching Celestia continue to suit up. Then she asked, "Should I go with you? And if so, will I need battle armor?" "I greatly appreciate it, Luna," Celestia said. "We defeated Sombra together once. We can defeat his creations the same way. But I want you to stay in the air. I am going to fight Sable on his own terms, simply to ensure he dies. But air support is always welcome." "Then he shall find no safety under the moon tonight," declared Luna, appropriately switching to the royal Canterlot voice. Applejack felt herself get slammed into a tree, then collapsed on the ground. She was spent. The running had taken a good deal of energy out of her, but while she had done remarkably well in fighting out Sable, his superior endurance and skill finally won out. "Now that I've finally broken you, I guess it's time to break you in. Fully," said Sable, very huskily, as he slowly moved over behind Applejack. She was scared that he was going to ravish her, and that this truly was the end of her life as a pony, and that the rating of this fic would go instantly into M. Or it would have been, had the roar of engine motors not started to echo out the forest, followed by the car and truck shooting out from the top of the crater edge and almost flying down to meet the werewolves at the bottom. "What in the hell are— Oh!" started Sable, who was cut off when the sudden appearance of the pink, bushy-made pony he had seen earlier in Ponyville. She had a mischievous grin on her face, to which Sable then realized she somehow brought a cannon into point-blank range against him. He had no time to react before the pink pony pushed the button on the weapon and blew the werewolf back a good little distance for the combination of confetti, glitter, Death Horse 5 dubstep, and raw force. Wasting no time, Pinky leaned over to help the wounded AJ get up. "You okay, AJ?"
Not really,"
groaned AJ, as he struggled to get back to her feet, partially because she was exhausted, partially because she nearly got violated by an ancient horror. "I don't think you'll appreciate just how close you all were cutting it for my sake." Close by, the vehicles finally found places to stop, and unloaded their passengers. Sable, upon recovery, found that what hence had been a one-on-one fight now turned into an one-against-all situation. Along with Applejack, there were now 9 additional ponies, who looked like they were ready to do some serious damage. That worthless yellow Pegasus was naturally hiding in the background, a baby dragon, and a minotaur, all standing at the ready to defend their compatriot. "Oh, look, you finally have some help. Too bad you actually need them and couldn't do it on your own, huh? And here I thought you were the strongest one here, but I must have thought wrong," taunted Sable. "I don't know what you're trying to do, monster, but I'm so past the point of caring, nothing you'll say will make me betray my friends and be your personal toy." "But you have even brought a bloody minotaur," accused Sable, trying to hide how desperate he was to keep his plans going. He hadn't known about the ponies having access to strange machines that practically eliminated his ability to outrun them normally, and the odds were stacked against him. "Well, I haven't seen one in ages. The last time I tried to hunt a minotaur didn't end well."
"What? You got your sorry butt kicked?"
said Ironwill. "Oh, quite the contrary. I did get my prey, but you minotaurs taste nothing like the cattle you're supposedly related to, and I wasted all that time trying to go after the queen. But too obviously, as I've not troubled the minotaurs for some time, it should be clear that I learned my lesson from that."
"Wait, so you're the werewolf that killed the Minotaur Queen all that time ago?"
realized Ironwill. "Yes, and as I said, it wasn't worth it, so I don't see the big—
"You're the reason for all this!"
Iron Will roared, loud enough to the point that every pony else stared back away from him. Normally, Iron Will was actually quite approachable after getting past his showboating persona, but now things had gotten to a head. His eyes turned red, and he was breathing heavily, and his muscles started to bulge. Some of the ponies in the audience also noted that his normal blue coat looked sort of green in this much angrier, hulking state.
You think that that's going to intimidate...
Uh-oh. Sable started again, annoyed at being interrupted. He was interrupted again, but this time by Iron Will shooting forward, grabbing Sable by the neck, and slamming him into the ground with a large amount of force.
It's because of you! I had to do all this!
Shouted the enraged Minotaur, lifting up the stunned Sable, only to deliver a punch in the face.
It's because of you! I had to go through all that crap so to get married!
What is he going on about? Asked Applejack.
Oh, yeah, I should have probably mentioned this to you earlier, said Twilight. Iron Will's reason for hunting werewolves in Ponyville is because if he catches a werewolf large enough and brings it back to his homeland, he'll be engaged to the Minotaur princess.
So you're saying I've been in mortal danger ever since Iron Will came into town simply because he wants to get married?
Yeah, pretty much,
said Twilight, oblivious to her friend's reaction. Applejack just face-huffed, or face-pawed in this case. While the whole discussion was going on, Iron Will was laying into Sable with blow after blow. Sable couldn't believe how horribly outclassed he was against just one opponent. Thinking it would change the flow of combat into his favor, Sable managed to leap into a deep bite into one of Iron Will's arms.
Roar!
Screamed Iron Will. But Sable's dismay seemed only to make the Minotaur angrier, as he just shrugged off what should have severed some tendons. Sable then also remembered he learned that Minotaurs were immune to lycanthropy. The curse created by Sombra so long ago was tailored to fit ponies and ponies alone, and the inclusion of other species hadn't even been considered. Ugh, that's a scary thought. A werewolf Minotaur. Ding! Ugh! Then finally, Iron Will stood in the moonlight, his sweating posture highlighted by the numerous wounds ranging from simple scratches to deep bleeding wounds. But in his clenched fist was the even more severely beaten form of Sable alone. Originally sleek and proud, it had been broken so many ways, both physically and mentally, and Sable understood this was the end.
I could kill you right now, then drag your corpse back to my homeland and fulfill the ritual, thus getting my parents off my back about having to get married,
said Iron Will.
But there is one other reason why I cannot allow myself to kill you.
Ha! Even after all that, you're still weak, rasped Sable, finding it extremely hard to breathe.
No, I'm not the weak one.
Iron Will then let go of Sable, who hit the crowd with a loud thud.
But I'm also not the one who has a curse to break.
Twilight smiled at that. Iron Will was throwing away the whole reason for his coming out here for Applejack's sake.
AJ, this might be difficult, but we think we know the only way to cure you of lycanthropy.
Is to kill this pony once and for all,
finished Applejack, not surprised at the shocked reactions of her friends. Yeah, I know. I'm not the usually type to be all dark like that. But here I am making an exception. She walked forward, stopping in front of the crippled werewolf in front of her. Get up! Sable cracked a grin. Make me. With one swift motion, Applejack grabbed the bottom of Sable's head, lifted it up just so she was looking at him eye to eye. I'm not going to let you die yet. Not yet. Not when I still have something to make very clear to you. Sable let out a pained laugh. What? That you're a better werewolf than me? Don't be ridiculous. It does. You'll never be worth anything as a werewolf. When you need your allies to help you against a single enemy. That's my point exactly, replied Applejack, narrowing her eyes. I'm not a werewolf. I'll never wanted to be a werewolf, and I never will be a werewolf. Not like you. Never like you. That's why we're different, Sable. You're the wolf, but I'm still a pony. And when you're dead, I'll still be alive. Because you gave up being a pony not so long ago and never embraced the most powerful force there is in Equestria, the magic of friendship. The ponies around me, they're not my allies. They're my family, my friends.
Helping each other out when a friend needs assistance is what ponies like them do. You never had a friend beyond Fair Vista, and even then I'll bet she was more of a follower to you than a true companion. That's why I never will be a werewolf like you. Applejack motioned for Big Back, who understood, and tossed Appleseed's hat to AJ, who swiftly caught it and placed it on her head where it belonged.
My name is Applejack, and I am, and always will be, a pony! Buck!
As he thrust Sable's head into the air to elevate his chest, then quickly spun around, and with the full force of her hind legs, she bucked him as hard as she could in the chest. The force of the impact shattered Sable's ribcage, causing broken ribs to pierce his heart and ensure his oncoming death, but also knocked him back into Fair Vista's tombstone. The old limestone tombstone shattered on impact, allowing Sable to keep flying backwards until he rebounded off the giant tree, collapsing in a broken heap on the ground. As he finally felt Death's embrace start to envelop him, only then did he notice the forms of Celestia and Luna descending from above. The false princesses had indeed gotten the last laugh.
Damn you. Damn you. Oh!
Was all Sable could say before Death finally claimed him, leaving only a broken husk of a body to commemorate one of the darkest legends in equestrian history before having finally come to an end. For Celestia, who had just gotten there with Luna and a full regiment of guards, it was the end of a nightmare she wanted gone for centuries. Now, she could finally a sigh of relief. At last, it's over. It's finally over, she exclaimed. For Applejack, the victory was short-lived, however. The sudden onset of lightheadedness, for some reason, made her extremely woozy, and moments later, she passed down on the ground, oblivious to the world around her.